Hello everybody, I'm Miggy from Familia IDJU, and I'm sorry I can't be there today, but I'm kind of here, sort of, right? Like I'm expected. Like, come on, some of you nod. Like, Danny, if you're here today, I see you nodding. Danny, come on. Like, I don't even know. Karen, Karen, shout out to the teacher. Okay, but so yeah, so from today's story, I don't know if it's been said or anything, but it's from Gish, who's Irish, and my quotes follow along the lines of culturalism and also identity. And one thing for the culture is on page 184 of The More Stories We Tell. One of the quote that I chose is, "We do not have the word in Chinese supportive, but my daughter too busy to listen. She has to go to meeting, she has to write memo, while her husband go to the gym to be a man. My daughter say otherwise he will be depressed. Seems like all his life he has this trouble, depression." So right off the bat, it's before that it's talking about the idea of how she makes this statement in China, the mother takes care of the child, and as the mother gets old, the daughter's supposed to take care of the mother. But here in America, the difference is that the mother has to be supportive of the child and always has to be there, and it's somewhat holds true, but could be vice versa, but depending on situations. But one thing I want to do point out is that um, going off the I guess the heroism, the norm, the women, her daughter has the power here. She's the one who bringing home the paycheck. She's the breadwinner. She's the one in the family, which is something, because throughout the whole book she mentions that in China. In China to be different. In China there'd be different circumstances. He'd be happy in China addressing her husband if they were to live there, and even with their young daughter. But I honestly I don't think in China he would be seen as a man, and even in modern day American society, in this patriarchal society that we live in today, we see that in the first quote right off the bat, it's like a question, like what does it mean to be a man? It says that he goes to the gym, and it's so focused on that. Like she has perspective, like she doubts him, for depression. It's like she doubts her son-in-law, and that's one thing against like Lois Tyson's criticism. Like with Lois Tyson, we have so many times that she addresses, how even in modern day society they'll find ways to manipulate and tweak the system. Like I remember at one point I think it was one for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 70 cents, and they could just easily change that by just switching the title. Like they could be the same job, a woman could be doing more, but they would switch it. And here it is like similar to that. Like she is doing so much more, she's the breadwinner, but yet she's still the mother and the wife, and she would always be seen as that. Quote number 2 is on the very next page. It is on page 185, and it goes from, like it's basically the whole sense of idea of identity, who we are as a person, who we are as a society, and what we think. And the one that stuck out to me was, when they're discussing, when the grandma, when she's there with, you know, um, her daughter's son-in-law's, her son-in-law's family, and, they're having that, Christmas tree talk, I guess, just to merge the families together. And, there's talk about the little daughter, and it says, and her granddaughter, and it says that, it seems funny for a girl named Sophie Shea to be brown, but she is brown. Maybe her name should be Sophie Brown. She never go in the sun, still she is that color. They say, nothing the matter with brown, they are just surprised. The Shea family talk is like this sometimes, going around and around like a Christmas tree train. Maybe John is not the father, I say one day to stop the train, and sure enough, train wreck. None of the brothers ever say the word brown to me again. This is that whole idea with, from Tyson's criticism for the, if that judgmental aspect, that the name to the face, it doesn't seem like, it's a white name. It doesn't seem like, she should be called that, or this person should be called that. It's like the whole idea with the concept with the signified and the signifier. For, for example, right here for this bag, we call it a bag because it was given the name of a bag. It's something to hold stuff inside, but we call it a bag because it's addressed as a bag. Ever since then, So it's like over time it builds up to what somebody should look like based on race, based on racial ethnicity, like based on skin color. That's how their name should be. They should be named according to skin color, according to what's right. It's going against those boundaries and norms. Like right there, the daughter is, I see the daughter as a breakthrough, as a barrier, breakthrough, because she goes and she stands through, she's merged. She's between this Irish family, and she's also, this Chinese culture, this ancient culture that her grandmother holds true dearly. Her mother, for the Irish, her grandmother for the Irish side had to raise these four boys, had to work because none of them had jobs, and strong independent values. And yet, the grandmother has these different ideas of how, a girl should be, how she should act, how she should be, because in China, there's just one quote that she goes on later in the story saying about how, there's literally a million little girls in China, not one would act like the way she acts when she's at the park. And it's just that difference, that divide in culture, and which I think it ties nicely into the last quote, because you see the difference with the culture already, but then you see it tied into how it goes into next with identity, with the name. Identity is always a source of who we find out who we are, and for Sophie Shea, she's gonna grow up into this world, with the misogynist race. She's half Irish, she's half Chinese, she's mixed, she's brown, she's not of white color. It's shocking because her grandmother and her mom are not that dark, and it's just shocking, but it is in the genes and it is who she is. And for us society to judge it based on saying that name doesn't fit the suitor is, what it shows as a prime example of how we need to go beyond that. And so I guess like a question we'll be here to address, to be think about in discussion, is, does it usually rely on the name to face? Like, why is it seen like, like we see it today? Like, what if there was like a blonde hair, blue eyed, Aryan race kid, Hitler's ideal child, let's just say Hitler's ideal child of how a German should be, from his mindset, but his name is Juan or Carlos or Devonte. Already as a society we see that like that's not really how it should be played out, how it should be portrayed. Like, that name doesn't fit the face, but only the time the name fits the face if you grow up and you know that person and you grow up with them and you know them through personality. So I guess the question would be like, how will we be able to evolve from that instead of putting it to name the face all the time, or name, it's actually more than name the face, it's named to a race, because we're already targeting that single race that name should belong to, as opposed to like, why can't we all share names? And the final quote that I have chosen is on page 187, and it's when she's talking about creativity. The grandmother's talking about creativity and how it's this weird thought in her mind, like, they don't have this word in China. She goes, "My daughter thought this Amy very creative, another word we do not talk about in China. In China, we talk about whether we have difficulty or no difficulty. We talk about whether life is bitter or not bitter. In America, all day long, people talk about creative." So right there, it's another quote, and it actually reminded me to a Marxism theory, like, a communist thing. Of course, China was a communist country, and for I think it still is. I'm not too sure on that, but it is very like idealistically, like everyone's like closed-minded, like they have to like abide by this law, abide by this. Like they don't have creativity, and as if creativity is like an escape, like a freedom. Because when you're in a Marxist society or a communist society where everything's the same, in order to be creative is to be outside the box and to be thinking, but yet you're confined, you're constricted, you're bounded into these circumstances where you can't expand those borders, expand those boundaries, and push through and fly. And here I think it's a play on words on that, because like the daughter, here in America, creativity is what, from the young youth, we tell our kids to be creative. Don't want to be, following, don't want to abide by what's the societal norms are, what you're expected to be. If we never got past the creativity gap, how much will we still be living the same way as we were in like the 1800s or 1900s? Women wouldn't be outside, their societal expectation role. They wouldn't be doing what they're doing. They would be in the house and the domestic part, what the nurturing jobs are, and then the man would be doing the more robust, more physical jobs, and we'd still be in that mindset. If we never got creative and a way of living and creative in a way of this whole idea, I don't think we would be very progressive. You need creativity in order to be progressive. And so I guess another discussion question I would ask, for the end of this um, is creativity really that much of a, bad negation, does it have that bad connotation with, communism? Because here it seems like she's using it in a creative, using it in a negative way when she's talking about how her daughter, because you got to remember, she calls her daughter or her granddaughter out on how she is like this new mindset of being creative, how she doesn't really accept it, she doesn't like it because her granddaughter has all this, this freedom and stuff. She says she has a wild side from, of course she blames the Irish side of the family, and she says that's where it comes from, and then her side is supposed to be the more obedient and disciplined. But it seems like the reason why she's like this is because of she's being told creativity. Like, I just feel as if like you see creativity as always as possibly being a bad way in this perspective. Like, creativity can never be bad in somebody, but I guess it can be used for bad. But do you see like the overall idea of thinking of it, of thinking of creativity being a bad idea in a non-communist society? And one more discussion question I want to ask, if we could go back to the first quote where she talks about her, her son-in-law. What does it mean to be a man in nowadays patriarchal society? Well, it's still a patriarchal society, but what does it mean to be a man, as opposed in the circumstances that he's in? Is he depressed because he's not the breadwinner, or he's depressed because he doesn't have a job? Because it does seem as if when the story progresses and he does get a job, he's jolly and happy, but although he doesn't obtain it, for that brief moment he is happy. So is this some sort of income that way he could contribute? Does it also play in a role of, him being the supporter, as always seen as the female role? Like, even though they don't make as much, for like I said earlier, for every dollar a man makes, a woman earns 70 cents. Is he's in that position of what a woman is, since his wife is bringing home most of the money and she's doing all these projects and she's like the lead roles and she has to do presentations, which are usually seen as a male figure because of like a power figure. And those will be my discussion questions for the end. If you guys want to address them, and I don't know what the group is. I don't know if it's Itzel, or I don't know if it's Taya, or I don't know if it's, I don't know. They could be over here. They could be over here too. It could be Lorena over here, but I don't know. But you guys to decide. Thank you. Go IDJU Familia.